In this video, we'll be learning how to use the Royal 200 typewriter. This typewriter was made by Silver Seiko for the Litton Industries Royal Typewriter Company back in around the 1970s. This typewriter came in many different forms. The most common one was the Royal Mercury that looks almost identical to the machine that I have over here. So this video instructions would apply for that machine as well. This video assumes that you know how to touch type using a computer keyboard, and we will assume that you have background in using a word processor on a computer. You do not have to watch this video from start to end. There will be chapter selections that you can jump to the various points in the video so that you can take a look at what you need to learn for this particular machine. Before we begin, let us go through the parts of the typewriter on this Royal 200 machine. This section, of course, is known as the keyboard. The key layout is in the QWERTY style, which is very similar to the ones that you find on most laptop or desktop computers. This bar over here is known as the space bar. These two keys at the side is known as the shift keys. When you press it down, it shifts the carriage upwards to allow you to type capital letters. This button is known as the shift lock key, which locks the shift key in place, similar to how you will use a caps lock key on a laptop computer. Pressing any of the shift keys would release the shift lock key. This is known as the margin release key. It also works as a key unjammer. This key is known as the backspace key. This is the touch selector that can shift from heavy touch to a lighter touch for the typewriter keyboards. This is known as the ribbon color selector. Currently it's in the black position, stencil position, and red position. This is known as the type cover, which can be pulled out to reveal what's inside the machine. When we remove the type cover, there are more parts to the machine. This is known as the type bars and the type segments. These are the ribbon spools that are sitting on the ribbon post over here. This is the ribbon guides. And if you use the machine, this piece over here, which lifts the ribbon upwards, is known as the ribbon vibrator. This is the card guide. It contains an alignment scale located over here. And this triangle piece is known as the card finger. This entire rubber roller at the back is known as the carriage. This metal piece is known as the paper bale. The giant rubber roller that you see in front of you is known as the platen. The knobs at the side of the machine is known as the platen knobs, which allows you to turn and rotate the platen. The feed rollers are located out of sight of the machine, underneath the platen. This piece over here that contains the Royal 200 name is known as the paper table. There is an additional metal piece that folds in and out to extend the paper table. To the left of the machine, this is known as the carriage return lever. This is known as the line space selector. And to the right of the machine, this is known as the carriage release lever. And this is known as the paper release lever. At the top of the machine, you will see that there is the margin scales over here, with the left and right margins located at the top of the machine. To change the ribbon on one of these machines, first shift the ribbon color selector to the red position like this. Next, press the shift lock key and press two keys in order to be able to lift the ribbon vibrator all the way up and hold it into position. Remove the ribbon cover and now we will proceed to remove the ribbon out of the ribbon vibrator. Lift up the typewriter spool by pushing away this metal piece and pulling it upwards. Wind up any excess ribbon that is present. You can do the same for the other spool. To load up a new pair of ribbon spools into the machine, perform the following action. Hook up the ribbon into the machine with the black portion facing upwards and the red portion facing downwards. Place it into the ribbon vibrator. It might take some fiddling in order to be able to get it in, but you should be able to successfully let the ribbon enter the spools. Ensure that the ribbon goes through this fork-like metal piece over here. This is known as the ribbon guide. Lift up this metal piece over here to allow the spools to fall into their proper positions. Do the same thing for the other spool. Place it through the ribbon guide. Lift away the metal piece and then put it down like this. Now you can begin to turn the ribbon spools in order to reduce some of the slack. When you are done with loading the ribbons, simply push the type bars back into their positions, cut down some of the slack in the ribbon spools, place the type cover back into its position, unlock the shift key, and place this lever back to the black ribbon selector. On a standard word processor used on a computer, you will notice that word processors usually present to you a blank sheet of paper so that you can begin typing your documents normally. Similarly, when you use one of these typewriters over here, you need to load in actual paper into the machine so that you'll be able to actually type out the documents. Usually it's advised for you to load 2 sheets of papers at once. One sheet is the paper that you're going to type on, and the second sheet behind it is to protect the rubber platen from the typing impressions. To load paper into the machine, first ensure that you align the left edge of the paper to the 0 position on the typewriter. Drop the paper gently down into the machine so that you can feel that the edge of the paper, the bottom edge of the paper, aligns with the feed rollers at the bottom of the typewriter. So all you have to do is just simply drop it gently into the machine. Next, grab one of the platen rollers and roll the platen knobs away from you like this. As you can see, the paper will begin to pop out of the feed rollers and to the other side of the typewriters, ready to be typewritten on. Lift up the paper bail and place the paper underneath the paper bail. The paper bail keeps the paper close to the platen so that you'll be able to ensure that the type impressions remain sharp and even and prevents buckling of the paper as you are typing on the machine. You will see that the paper feed rollers keep the paper firmly in place. You can now reposition your typewriter to wherever your typing would like to begin, and you can start typing. To release the paper, simply engage the paper release lever by pushing it upwards. Lift up the paper bail and you can pull the paper easily out of the machine. Sometimes you may accidentally feed the paper in the wrong direction, like this. As you can see, the edge of the paper is not straight and it's not aligned. To ensure that you'll be able to make the edge straight, you can engage the paper release lever, adjust the paper like so, ensuring that the top and bottom edge of the paper is aligned, and positioning it towards the 0 position on the paper table on the margin scales, and then re-engage the paper release lever so that disengage the paper release lever so that the paper gets clamped to the typewriter. Now simply roll the paper back to double check if it is aligned with the alignment scale at the bottom. If you realize that when you place in the paper and you realize that the paper doesn't seem to roll into the machine, no matter how much you turn, you may have caused your paper release lever to be engaged. Disengage the paper release lever and you will see that the trouble disappears. The procedure is similar when you're loading in index cards such as this one over here. Align it to the 0 position. Ensure that the paper release lever is not engaged. Align it to the 0 position and gently turn the card into the machine and place your card underneath the paper bail and position it to the beginning of the typing line, usually at the left margin. To remove the card, just engage the paper release lever and simply pull the card out. Carbon paper such as this one over here allows you to be able to generate duplicates of your documents. Place one sheet of paper and then one layer of carbon paper to set up your carbon pack. One sheet of paper and then one more layer of carbon paper. And finally, end it off with your one sheet of paper that represents the original document. You can repeat these alternating layers of carbon papers and standard paper in order to be able to generate your carbon pack. Straighten your carbon pack onto a flat edge and your carbon pack is ready to go. This carbon pack, consisting of 2 pieces of carbon paper and 3 pieces of standard white color paper, would generate for you 2 carbon copies and 1 original document, making a total of 3 total copies in total. To load it up into your machine, first ensures that the line space selector lever is set to the 0 position, which will disengage the ratcheting on the machine. So now you can see that it spins freely. Take a half sheet of paper and load it up into the machine. Turn it in so that it appears at the bottom edge like this. Take your carbon pack, ensuring that the carbon side, which is the black color side, is facing towards you. Again, make sure that your carbon pack is straightened and then place it behind the machine like this, such that it is in front of the half sheet of paper but behind the platen, like so. Now simply pull the half sheet of paper through your machine and you will see that your carbon pack is loaded properly with the top edge of the paper all aligned relatively well with the carbon paper. Place it behind your platen and then reposition your typewriter to where you want to start typing, and then after that set your line space lever to the correct position. To remove the carbon pack, simply just disengage and pull through the line space lever. Here is how you will set up the margins using the Royal 200 typewriter. At the top of the machine, you will notice that there are 2 metal pieces that's present over here. These are known as the left and the right margin respectively. They work very similarly to the left and right margin stops that is present on your standard word processors that you use on the computer. To set up the margins on the typewriter, first slide these margins to the outer extremes. And to slide on them, simply push them down and then slide them to the positions that you would like. Now that you have slid them to the outer extremes, you will notice that when you press the carriage release lever and hold down, you will see that you can move the typewriter to the right and to the left through the entire length of the carriage. Grab your paper and load it into the typewriter. Align it to the 0 position and roll it into the typewriter. Place the paper underneath the paper bail. To set the left margin, first position your typewriter to where you want the left margin to be. Now, shift the left margin stop until you can no longer shift it any further. So the left margin will now have been set. The operation is similar for the right margin. Position the typewriter to where you want the right margin to be. Shift the right margin stop as far as it will go. And the right margin will now have been set as well. Another way to set up this typewriter's margins is to use calculations. This typewriter has what is known as an elite typeface, which means that for every 12 characters that you move along the scales, you will shift the typewriter's printing point by exactly 1 inch. For example, let's say I would like to type on this piece of A4 paper, and I would like to set up exactly 1 inch margins on the left and on the right of the sheet of paper. Position your piece of paper, whatever size it is, at the back of the typewriter like this so that it aligns with the margin scales. Then measure exactly how wide the paper is on the margin scales. In my case, my paper is exactly 99 characters wide. Once you have your measurements of the paper, now you can simply do some simple addition and subtraction to discover where the left and right margin should be positioned. The left edge of the paper is set to be at position 0. So in order to get a 1 inch left margin, simply add 0 plus 12 together to get you the number 12. And the position number 12 is where the left margin should be set. The red arrow would tell you exactly where the margin is pointing towards. So from here, by setting it like this, the margin on the left is now set at position number 12, which is 1 inch away from the left edge of the paper. You can do something similar to the right margin, but instead of addition, you do subtraction. The paper's right edge is located at position number 99. If you subtract away 12, you will get the number 87. So position the cursor of the right margin until it hits the position number 87. Somewhere around here. Now, when you load the paper as per normal, by aligning it to the 0 position, you will set both the left and right margins to have exactly 1 inch spacings. Over at the front of me is the keyboard, and the keyboard uses a standard QWERTY layout, very similar to those that you find on any IBM or Apple computers. There are several differences, however. The first difference is you will see that the special symbols printed above on the number keys look slightly different to those that you find on the standard computer keyboard. The second thing is that the keyboard is a bit more sloped as compared to a laptop or even a desktop keyboard found in today's world. To use one of these typewriter keyboards, ensure that your fingers are curved naturally like this, and then rest your fingers on the home rows A, S, D, F, J, K, L, and semicolon. Your thumbs can rest on the spacebar. We will assume that you know how to touch type using a standard computer keyboard. Have a feel of the keys by reaching upwards and reaching downwards. This helps you to estimate how far you need to reach out in order to strike the keys later. The general guide to use one of these typewriter keyboards is to strike the keys as if they were hot, quickly and sharply. When you strike the keys quickly and sharply, you deliver enough energy such that the keys will be able to cause the type bars to strike the paper, and you do it quickly such that the fingers do not cling to the keys. To demonstrate the proper typing technique, I will use my left hand to demonstrate this, first using my index fingers. Now I'll use my middle finger. And my ring finger. And now finally my pinky. It is a little bit difficult to achieve this striking technique using your end fingers as compared to your middle and your index fingers, which are the strongest. but with enough practice, you'll be able to achieve the proper striking technique. When you properly strike the typewriter keys, you ensure that your impressions are nice and sharp. The wrong technique is to press down hard on the keys, like this. There are a few reasons why you do not want to press down hard on the keys. The first reason is because as you type, the typewriter's carriage actually moves towards the left while an impression is being made. If you decide to press down hard on the keys like this, what happens is that it acts like a stamp, where the type bar is pushing against the ribbon like this as the typewriter's carriage is moving towards the left. When this happens, the type ribbon is pressed on a moving piece of paper, which may cause the letters to smear. We can see quite a clear difference, as you can see over here. When I push down hard, the typewritten letter T tends to smear like this, as compared to, let's say, if I type it properly, the T looks a little bit more cleaner and sharper. Another reason why you want to avoid pressing down hard and clinging your fingers on the typewriter keys is to avoid type bar jams. Whenever you strike a key on the typewriter, the type bar flies all the way to the carriage, where the ribbon lifts up so that the type bars would clash with the ribbon, pressing it down and creating a type impression. If you cling your fingers to the keys as you type like this, your finger is now in the way of the type bar's falling mechanism. Because the finger is placed here, the type bar cannot move back to its rest position. As a result of this, if you strike another key, you may cause it to collide or even jam. Striking the key quickly like this allows the type bars to be able to fall all the way back to its neutral or rest position quickly through the force of gravity, so that you avoid clashes. This is also a technique in order to allow you to type quicker on a manual typewriter. Typing on a manual typewriter such as this Royal 200 involves you to be able to type with accuracy. You target accuracy and speed will come later for typing. Typing on a manual typewriter requires you to type with a consistent rhythm, similar to a metronome. To type with a consistent rhythm, do the following actions. Strike a key, pause, strike a key, pause, strike a key, pause, strike a key, pause, strike a key, and pause. When you do this, during the period of time when you're pausing, what you need to do is to think about what is the next key that you need to strike with your fingers. It is essential that you maintain a consistent rhythm. Of course, if you're using a typewriter for, let's say, writing stories or poetry where thoughts come into your mind and you type them out, usually it's difficult to achieve a consistent rate since our human minds do not really think in a consistent and rhythmic way. If you want to practice how to type quickly with a typewriter, you should use a piece of document or text that has already been typewritten or printed so that you can copy over and practice your typing skills. To increase your typing speed on this particular typewriter, simply reduce the amount of time taken to pause and wait to think about the next stroke, like this. By reducing the amount of time taken to pause and think about the next stroke, you are able to gradually increase your typing speed. Finally, once you're able to reduce the timing all the way to the minimum or zero pause timing, you're able to achieve top speed on this particular machine. The Royal 200 typewriter also comes equipped with a touch selector over here. This touch selector adjusts how much force is being used to push down this particular bar, which will adjust the touch or feel of each of these keys on your typewriter. H is set so that you require a heavier touch to type on this machine, while L is set when you require a lighter touch to operate this machine. Try it at different settings in between the L and H markings until you find one that you feel most comfortable when using this particular typewriter. The shift key on the left and the right of the typewriter is used to capitalize and type special symbols that's present on the top of the number row keys. It works identically to the ones that you find on your computer keyboard. To use the shift key, you will strike the shift key and press it down all the way using either your left or your right pinky. If you want to capitalize something on your left hand, you will use your right pinky to hold down the shift key. If you want to capitalize something using your right hand, you will need to use your left hand to press down the shift key. Remember to strike it in this formation. Shift key down, press a keystroke, and then shift key up. With practice, you can speed up the action. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Remember that you need to hold down the shift key all the way down using your pinky. If you do not hold the shift key all the way down, like this, what happens is that your capital letters will begin to float upwards. Pressing the shift key does not require you to move your entire hand away from the keyboard. All you simply have to do is to anchor your main index finger on either the F or the J key and then reach out with your pinky, like this. If you would like to type multiple capital letters or special symbols in succession, press the shift lock key that's present over here. What happens is that now the carriage has been lifted and you can see that the shift key is held down by the switch. Unlike a computer's caps lock key, when you have the shift lock key activated, the special symbols will be printed instead of numbers. If you would like to deactivate the shift lock, do not press down on the shift lock again. This doesn't work like the computer keyboard. Instead, press down either one of the shift keys, like this. Word processors usually use the blinking cursor to indicate to you exactly where the next letter you type would appear on a piece of paper. Some of them even include some statistics that is printed at the bottom of the word processor. On the typewriter, the process of determining where your text would be printed, it can be determined in this fashion. This point over here is the printing point, and it tells you the horizontal position using the paper bill of where your next text will be printed on a piece of paper. The card holder with its alignment scale present over here indicates to you the vertical position as to where the text will be printed. So if I were to type something, it would approximately print over here. As you continue typing towards the right of the page, you eventually hear the right margin warning bell. When you hear the bell, you have approximately 8 characters left to type before you reach the end of the right margin. Beyond this point, you'll be unable to type or space through using the typewriter. The typewriter locks in place. If you would like to type beyond the right margin, simply press the margin release key. And once you do that, you can continue typing forward, until of course you reach the end of the page. A similar procedure can also be done if you would like to type beyond the left margin. For example, let's say this is the left margin, and I would like to type something beyond it over here. I can't backspace beyond this point. In order to do so, I have to hold down the margin release key and then backspace a few spaces behind, and then now I can continue my typing. The margin release key on this typewriter has also another special function in which that it can unjam two type bars if they collide. The carriage return lever is located on the left, and it does two things. When you activate the carriage return lever by pushing the carriage to the right, what you do is that you actually cause the paper to advance forward by a few lines and also cause the printing point to shift back to the left so that you can begin typing from the left margin again. Usually, to return the carriage, you can perform the following steps. Leave your right hand on the home row keys, reach out with your left hand, and then using your index finger, push against the lever until it comes to a stop on the left margin. Then bring your hand forward back to the home row position. Some people who are more skilled in using the carriage return lever are able to give this lever enough energy such that momentum carries this carriage all the way to the right without the need for your hand to follow through, and therefore you can save some time when you're performing a carriage return. However, from my experience using this particular machine, the carriage doesn't really glide and slide very smoothly. So often when I have to return the carriage, I tend to need to follow the carriage all the way back to the left margin position before I can continue typing. Modern word processor has what is known as a word wrapping feature, in which that as you type towards the right margin, your computer is smart enough to be able to shift the last word from the right margin all the way to the left so that you can continue typing seamlessly without having to press any enter keys. For a manual typewriter, however, when you need to return to the next line, it's up to the operator to decide. So therefore, there are several strategies and methods that you can use in order to determine when should you return the carriage. It is up to personal preference and situation as to what method you like to use. One method you can use is that you can decide to return immediately when you hear the right margin warning bell. So I heard the right margin warning bell. I'm going to finish up my last word. Then I'm going to perform a carriage return to continue on to the next line. Another strategy that you can use is to use hyphenation. So universe may be too long a word to fit in this particular gap. So therefore I split the word into two. The first part being uni, I then perform a hyphenation, and then I return the carriage to continue the word. The last strategy that you can use is just to perform a margin release. So if I want to type the word universe, I cannot type the last E, so all I simply have to do is perform a margin release, type the last E, and then return my carriage. So these are the three strategies in general that you can use to perform a carriage return as you're continuously typing. Unlike a word processor, your typewriter is unable to erase mistakes easily. For example, let's say I would like to type the word would instead of could, as I've done in this particular sentence over here. If you would like to erase the mistakes, first push the carriage all the way to either the left or to the right, like this. Roll up the paper slightly so that now you can use the platen as a hard surface for you to be able to erase your mistakes. Right now I'm going to be using an ink eraser, which is an eraser that has a very hard and abrasive sort of rubber, in order to rub out this particular word. So I brush with a up and down motion in order to be able to erase out the letter C from the paper. This can, however, scrape off some of the paper as well. We push the carriage all the way to the end so that you allow eraser dust to fall out of the paper and rather into the type bar segments. Now, reposition your typewritten work back to the typing line, and then you can start to type your letter. So as you can see, we have corrected the mistake. An easier method, however, would be to use simply some whiteout solution such as this one that I have over here. Again, simply position your carriage all the way to the outer extremes. Roll it up a little bit so that you have a hard surface, and then apply your liquid paper or whiteout solution. Once you have applied the whiteout solution to the paper, wait for it to dry a little bit. You can blow on it or you can just let it naturally air dry. You do not want to roll this in when it's wet because you may start to smear liquid whiteout all over the typewriter. Reposition your machine, roll it back into position, and then now you can type in the correct letter. If you need to make a correction at the very bottom of the page, roll back the paper slightly, insert another piece of paper in between your original typewritten work and the paper table. This prevents the paper from slipping. Once you've inserted the page in, roll the paper forward. And now you can safely make your erasures. Wait for it to dry. Then what you can do is you can reposition as per normal without worrying that the work will slip. And now you can remove the original piece of paper out to complete your corrections. Most typewriter ribbons usually come with two colors, with the primary color usually black, located at the top, and the secondary color, usually red, located at the bottom. Using the ribbon color selector, you can choose the color that you would like to type on. At the lower position, you can type in the black portion of the ribbon. At the upper portion, you can type on the red position of the ribbon. If you set the ribbon color selector to the middle portion, you activate the stencil setting, which results in the ribbon vibrator being at its lowest position, and therefore the type bar doesn't make contact with the ribbon at all, like this. In the past, this was used for stencil work, where the metal of the type bars were cut into a wax layer, which will allow you to use certain duplicator machines to be able to make hundreds of copies of your typewritten work. If you use a single color ribbon, it is advisable to always use the ribbon color selector to be at the lowest portion. This is because if you set the ribbon vibrator at the black portion, you will notice that the ribbon would lift up only about halfway through. If you set it to the upper portion, what happens is that the ribbon now lifts all the way up. If this was a single color ribbon and you want to type on the bottom portion of the ribbon, what happens is that now the mechanism needs to lift the ribbon to a higher position, which may slow down the action of the ribbon. Therefore, if you would like to type on the bottom half of a single color ribbon, which means that the ribbon containing only one single color, what you need to do is you have to reload the ribbon and flip it to the other side instead. This is the line space selector lever. The line space selector lever works exactly identical to the ones that you find on your word processor, where it affects the spacing between each of the new lines that you type. Currently, right now, it is set to the single line spacing setting. Pulling it forward by one notch allows you to activate single and a half line spacing. And pulling it further allows you to type in double line spacing. The dot at the very top of the line space selector lever allows you to lock the carriage. There is a notch that is present on the carriage rails that allows for this locking feature. So, if you position your typewriters roughly towards the center and continuously push this lever forward, you will reach a point where the lever would lock into place. And this causes the carriage to be unable to be moved from left to right. This is the ideal position to store your typewriter so that you protect the escapement in the machine. If you want to unlock this typewriter, simply position it at either the 1, 1.5 or 2 spacing, and you can see that the carriage suddenly can move freely again. When you set the line space selector lever to 1, 1.5 or 2, you realize that as you rotate the knob on the platen, there is a clicking noise as you move it up and down the lines. If you set it to the 0 position, you realize that the carriage platen now can turn freely, with no clicking in place. When the line space selector is set to 1, 1.5 or the 2 position, what happens is that the vertical point at which I can type on this machine is completely fixed in steps. As you can see, by clicking the wheel by 1 step, I can only type at these positions. I can't go any higher and I can't go any lower, and I cannot type in between. If I were to set this position to the 0 position, you will see that I can finally type in any vertical position that I like. All I'm doing right now is simply gently turning the platen knob so that I can type in any vertical position. As you can see from the letter Z's, you can see that I can fit a lot more letter Z's in different vertical positions as compared to when the ratchet was still activated. The interesting thing is that if I put it back to either the 1, 1.5 or 2 position, the original line spacings is not lost. So for example, right now if I press the letter Q, there should be very little to minimum overlap or shadowing occurring if I type the letter Q again. Slight bolding and shadowing is expected because this mechanism is not always 100% perfect, but you can see that the line spacing that was originally set before the lever was set to the 0 position is still maintained. What this means is that this typewriter allows you to be able to type superscript and subscripts using the 0 position on the line space selector. Let's say I would like to type 37 degrees. 37 degrees is not really possible to type on this machine since there's no degree symbol on this typewriter. However, you can simulate a degree symbol by simply performing a superscript and typing the small letter O to type a degree sign, such as the one over here. First, type in the number 37, then push this lever all the way to the 0 position. Now turn the paper downwards slightly, and then type in a small letter O. And then now flick the lever back to the 2 position or whatever line space setting that you previously chosen, and then type in the letter C. You can see that the vertical alignment of 37 and C is relatively the same on this card guide. Therefore, you have performed a superscript on the small letter O to create a degree symbol. Subscripts can also be done in a similar manner, for example in the formula H2O. Position this lever to the 0 position, turn the paper upwards slightly, like this, press the number 2, and then flick this lever back to whatever line space setting that you had previously. In my case it's the number 2, and then after that readjust and type in the letter O. As you can see, the subscript number 2 is printed properly, with the H and the O being aligned vertically correctly. Now let's talk about some special effects that you can apply to text. If you would like to bold text using this particular typewriter, there is a strategy that one can do. To demonstrate this, let me type a sample of ordinary text first. Let's say I would like to bold the word in the center over here. Simply backspace to the start of the first word, then press and hold down the spacebar of the typewriter. When you do this, you notice that the typewriter nudges forward a little bit. Now retype the letter B, and you can see that there is a little bit of bolding occurring. You repeat this procedure for the rest of the characters, and you can see that this slight offset of the text allows you to be able to either produce bold or shadow effects on the text itself. If you would like a shadow effect instead, what you can do is use the backspace key to gradually push it down gently to nudge the carrier a little bit to the left, and then press the letter again to create this sort of offset sort of look. If you would like to perform an underline function on the word over here, simply position your carrier all the way to the beginning of the word, like this. Next, what you should do is you should press the Shift lock key and then hit the number 6 key to print out an underscore character. Underscore the entire word. Once you're done underscoring, you'll realize that you have performed an underlying effect on the word itself. Typewriters work slightly differently as compared to computers, in the sense that you can actually backspace and overlay special characters on top of each other so that you can generate new characters. For example, my typewriter over here does not have the pound sterling symbol. However, I can reproduce the pound sterling symbol by performing the following actions. Simply type in the capital letter L, backspace, and type a small letter F. As you can see, I've generated through overlapping a sort of pound sterling symbol over here. Japanese yen can also be generated something similar by pressing the Y key, backspacing, and pressing the equal sign. And there are other symbols that also could be done in a similar fashion. The dollar sign technically is already present on your typewriter itself already, but this is another way that you can generate the dollar sign if your machine does not have it. Now let's talk about paragraph justification. Left aligned paragraphs are usually the easiest to type. Essentially, just continue typing starting from the left margin, reaching the right margin when you hear the bell. Perform a carriage return. That is the default mode that is used normally when you're typing, like this. As you can see, the paragraph is aligned towards the left. If you want to perform a right align instead, for example, let's say you want to align a date towards the heading at the right, what you can simply do is position the carriage all the way to the right to find where the right margin is. Then, once it's at the right margin, simply backspace for every character that you want to type. Let's say I would like to type the date. 2022 space JUNE space 09. As you can see, the date is now aligned towards the right. If you would like to perform center alignment or for typing a heading, usually you need to do a bit of mathematics to determine exactly where to position the typewriter carriage. Let's assume that we'd like to type to the center of the paper over here. My 1-inch margins have been set in such a way that my left margin is on the position number 12 and my right margin is at position number 87. To determine where the center of the page is supposed to be, first add the number 12 with the number 87, essentially adding your left and right margins together. The number that I get is 99. Divide this number by 2 and round it up. 49.5 is the number I get, which means I should set my carrier such that the pointer is pointing to the number 50. Around here. Now that my carrier is centered to the number 50, I backspace every 2 characters in my heading. Let's say I would like to use the word typewriter as my heading, so I'll backspace for every 2 characters in my heading. TYPEWRITER. And now I type the heading. You will realize that the typewriter heading is now located at the center of the page. One final feature that I would like to demonstrate to you is this particular section over here. This triangle is known as the permanent card finger, and it is used to hold cards and thick pieces of paper close to the platen for proper typing impressions. There is a small hole at the tip of this particular triangle. You can insert a ballpoint pen inside, and when you insert a ballpoint pen, by releasing the carriage, you can begin to use it to draw horizontal lines, or You can also turn the carriage knobs, the platen knobs, upwards and downwards to draw vertical lines, which could be useful in helping you draw boxes or tables on your document without the need to remove the particular document out of the typewriter. The alignment scale can also be used if you need to reinsert work that has been typewritten. For example, let's say I've typewritten this particular sentence over here. Notice that the white color lines that's present on the alignment scale usually is located approximately center to each of the characters that you have printed. And again, the vertical positioning of the text is placed just above the alignment scale like this. Using this knowledge, you can actually reinsert paper into the typewriter so that you can begin typing your work again. For example, let's say I would like to type a word over here, but I have removed the paper out of the typewriter already. If I want to reinsert the work so that it's aligned, first I try to align the paper to the 0 position at first, and then I roll the paper back into position. Now I just turn it down to see the alignment. As you can see, the text is a little bit too low, so I would use the paper release to slowly pull the paper upwards, and I would use, let's say, the letter V as my gauge to determine the horizontal position. So I just have to nudge it a little bit towards the left, and I observe that the text is relatively aligned, so I lock in my paper. Now reposition the thing, and I can make my insertion. You can see that the text is relatively aligned, although this process of reinserting the paper would not always produce perfect results. It is very difficult to achieve perfect results once you have actually removed the paper out of the typewriter. Overall, the Royal 200 I think is a relatively good beginner typewriter to use. It is built relatively well, and it does type very well, especially if you use proper typing technique. It is not as smooth or as refined as the earlier Royals, such as the Royal Quiet Deluxe, but I think this makes a very good beginning typewriter, and it can produce and churn out very good work if done correctly. Thank you so much for watching this particular video. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, you can leave it down in the comments, and I'll try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. See you in the future videos, and we hope you have enjoyed this particular video tutorial.